Welcome back to Inside Politics. Our guest today is Mayor David Briley. He's a candidate for re-election in the August 1st primary. We're having all the candidates on in the next couple of weeks, so be sure and watch them. Mayor, going back to the budget, you've been a big supporter of transit. You supported the transit referendum, which was pretty resoundingly defeated not long after you came into office. Your budget, at least according to the WeGo people, is $8 million less than what they wanted. How can you be a transit supporter and have a budget cut, which is going to result in fare increases and service cuts?
Sure, it is. The state cut our funding level this year by about $8 million.
These are state cuts, not metro cuts.
They're not metro cuts. Now, we could have tried to find additional money for WeGo, but it would have come at the expense of pay raises for our employees. And so we've been working with WeGo to minimize the interruption to folks. And when I met with Steve Bland, the director of WeGo, just I guess 10 days ago, it seemed like we'd gotten it down to about 12 people that were going to lose all access to service, and we're going to find a way to get them more service through the access ride to the greatest extent possible. Surely we do want to improve the quality of our public transit, and we're committed to doing that. And this year was certainly difficult for WeGo in that context.
The council failed by one vote to approve a property tax increase. The city hasn't had a property tax increase since 2012. Council members are saying that privately you're telling them you're going to go for one next year after you're reelected. If we need more money in the community, why didn't we do it now?
Well, that's not what I've been telling council members. What I've been telling council members and people consistently is that the first step is not to decide to raise taxes. The first step is to decide what you need. And so right now we don't know what we need to pay our teachers. We don't know what that number is, or for our firefighters, or for our police. So we're in the process of doing comprehensive assessments of those things. Then next year we'll look at what our revenue is through growth and maybe through some additional state money, and then we'll make a decision about what we need to do. But, and this may be why they got confused, I am committed to making sure that we have the revenue necessary to fund those things.
The budget that the council passed, that was your budget, and it went through by default, envisions about $40 million in revenue that's not there right now. Part of it would be from the selling of the downtown energy system the city has, and the other would be for the privatization of the downtown parking system, the parking meters. How are you going to make up that difference? I know you're going to try to get the council to take another look at that, but both those have gotten kind of chilly reception so far.
Well, just to be clear, both of those are long-term plans that were initiated through something very much like a Blue Ribbon Commission, but through something that looked at smart cities. What are smarter cities around the country doing? And so the agreement to have a joint venture with a private company to manage our parking and integrate technology into it's what virtually every city around the country is doing.
There's a $30 million payment on that on the front end for this, and that's supposed to be in this year's budget. If that's not there, where do you make up the money?
So last year we had a similar number. We had $15 million in last year's budget for parking as well. The council approved that last year. And the way we manage through that is by managing our expenses closely, by looking for new revenue. And we have the option of, we are exploring with MDHA a way to regularize, to make the payments regular on the TIF, and we think that's going to result in both some one-time savings and some long-term savings for the city. We intend to do that regardless of whether or not parking goes forward, but we think that'll give us some leeway on that as well. Now the DES, the city has an option, right? We can either invest $60 million of our money in upgrading it and expanding it, or we can get a private company to do it. And we think that having the private sector come in and do something that a city really doesn't do around the world anymore is the better option.
Have you got the state on board? But they're the largest user of it.
We believe the state will be on board.
You think they'll buy off on that deal? Councilman Cooper says quite frequently that one of the problems is we're spending too much time worrying about downtown, particularly tourism, and not enough on neighborhoods and other things, particularly when you look at all the funds that are being driven by tourism dollars, and much more than anybody ever thought would ever be needed to fund the Music City Center. Right. Is it time to change the law or change the allocation so that some of that money comes for all the city, not just to be used and basically hoarded by the tourism officials? It's being generated, but...
Yeah. Well, Councilman Cooper makes some pretty frank misrepresentations about our ability to do that. We can't just change the law to do it. When we built the convention center, we borrowed money from the bondholders, and part of the covenants between the city and the bondholders is that we will maintain that tourist development zone, and that the money that's collected there will go towards the purpose of paying down the convention center. Now, I have worked with the Convention Center Authority to get $10 million a year to focus on the tourist-related costs for downtown, and that is something that we've been able to do. They can use it on tourist-related expenses, and we're working hard with them to make sure that we're maximizing our ability to do that.
Downtown also has all the scooters right now. You want to see them go away for a time. This has been an off and on kind of thing, and it hasn't worked very well. You're being accused by John Ray Clemens of having 4 different positions about scooters in just like the last 4 months. Is that true?
No, it's not true. When the scooters came at the beginning, I was not in favor of them. The council, as they can do, adopted an ordinance overwhelmingly that allowed them to come. I signed it because the council had decided. Now, right now, it is clear to me that what the council did was a failed experiment. It doesn't work. And so I'm sending legislation up to the council to ban them. And then we'll take some time and let the Transportation Licensing Commission decide if there's a way that they can come back and be both safe and not block the sidewalk in every single instance, because it's just not right for Nashvillians who might be using a wheelchair to get around downtown or might be blind getting around downtown, have the sidewalk blocked, and their very important use of the sidewalk be taken away from them. And I'm not going to let that happen in Nashville.
Is there time to do that between now and the end of the term? The council meets a few times between now and then. If this takes ordinance or legislation like that, it's going to be a resolution they could do, but an ordinance gets kind of tricky.
Well, there's an ordinance pending on second reading next Tuesday, and we have an amendment next Tuesday. Councilman Cooper basically says you're doing this to sort of favor 2 of the larger companies, but right now we have 7. 7 may be too many, but is too few. Are you giving these 2 companies a monopoly if you only have those 2 providing the service in Nashville? Well, we haven't picked 2. I mean, the issue would be that the Transportation Licensing Commission could come up with an RFP that would let all of them bid on it and decide. They could decide who actually would be getting the contract. I have no idea who would get it. The issue is that by having 7 here, they all need to have 2,000 or 3,000 for it to work for them financially. So if you bring it down to a smaller number of companies and a smaller number of scooters, it might actually work both for the companies and for the city. Mayor
David Briley is our guest on Inside Politics. We're talking about the upcoming election on August 1st, in which he's a candidate for re-election. Back to continue our conversation after you watch these messages.